Hello and welcome to Streams, brought to you by Good News Broadcasting. This is the podcast where we review and critique popular TV shows and movies on our streaming platforms and explore their themes to see how they may align or conflict with scripture so you can watch with wisdom. As usual, my name is Eamonn and today I'm joined by a special guest, someone who's been on the podcast before, Wana.
Hello.
Last time we did Daredevil.
We did do Daredevil.
And today we're going to be doing House of Guinness.
Come on, I'm ready.
I'm excited for this one because I actually love the show.
This was a really good show. It's a very well-made show.
Yeah.
There are definitely some things that we'll touch on, but as far as like how well crafted this is, the writing's really good, the directing is good, the cinematography is good. For something to grab me like that, it's actually decent.
It came out literally in September 2025, and so it's fresh, really. It's on Netflix as well. And the reason why I think I loved it so much, and I think the reason why it's so well crafted is because it's done by the same people who made Peaky Blinders. And Peaky Blinders is a very popular show. In terms of like who's in this show, there is kind of semi-well-known people. There's not like a big name actor. The names really that stood out to me that I knew beforehand was Louis Partridge. He's Edward Guinness in this. So he's one of the main two characters.
Oh, I didn't know either of those two fellas.
Oh, he's in Alana Holmes. But the other name was James Norton. He plays Sean Rafferty.
He's the only one I knew in the show.
As well as that, probably the biggest name that most people will know is Jack Gleeson, who played Joffrey in Game of Thrones.
He did.
Yeah, everyone knows him because Joffrey was the worst person on planet Earth, even though he was fictional.
Yeah.
The plot of this show is, it's 1868, and the Guinness family patriarch, Benjamin Guinness, has died. And Guinness is now at the height of its powers, and his 4 children basically inherit portions of the business, and that's kind of where a lot of the plot comes from. It's kind of the outworking of what they've inherited and how they live that out. But on the whole, as we said, I think we both very much enjoyed it. And so what we're going to do is we'll get to the rating now, so then we can get to the spoiler section, so we can actually dig deep into some of the plot points.
Okay.
And so if you've never watched Streams before, if you've never heard of this podcast, we rate all films and TV shows on a scale of 1 to 5. And this is not just how much we enjoyed it, but it's how safe is it for a Christian to watch. So if it's a 1, if this is a do not watch this, don't go anywhere near this, no Christian should watch this, it's not going to be good for your faith. Whereas a 5 it's super safe, it's the Prince of Egypt, it's happy days. Any Christian of any age can watch it. So on that scale of 1 to 5, where would you put it and why?
I'd give it a 3. I think it's a very like middle of the road thing. There's some themes that we'll talk about a bit later on where I think really it's down to your own conviction about whether you want to see that or not. But I don't think there's necessarily anything that is hyper detrimental or anything like that. And honestly, I think most of it is pretty middle down the road as far as watchability. That's where I'd put it.
Definitely. I think I agree with you. I'd put it as a 3 as well.
Oh, let's be good.
It is rated a 15. So it's rated a 15 for graphic violence, sex, strong language, and depictions of drug and alcohol use. And there is also male frontal nudity for one scene.
It definitely is a 15.
Yes, 100%.
So if you're a parent and you're wondering whether you should watch it with your kid, just have that in the back of your mind. I think it does accurately stick to that rate. It's not gratuitous. It's not a 12A, for example.
No, it's definitely not. And it's one of those where it's like when we reviewed Yellowstone. I could understand why someone would not want to watch this at all.
Yeah.
But I can understand why a Christian would say, I can watch this. It's kind of right slap back down the middle where there will be things you may have to fast forward or you may have to skip a little bit of. But in most things these days, you're going to have to skip something.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of fairly down the middle. But what we'll do now is we'll get on to the spoilers because there is not a lot we can actually say without really digging into the plot, really. And so if you want to go away and you want to watch this, then this is your opportunity to turn off. You can watch it on Netflix and you can come back at any time and listen to what we have to say in it. As we're going to dive into some spoilers of the plot, we're going to look at kind of how accurate it was and some of the plot points from actual history, as well as looking at some of it in a deeper place and kind of saying, well, what does the Bible say on certain things that happens within the show? And so if you do want to watch it, this is your opportunity. You've been warned. You can't blame me if it gets spoiled for you now. The whole thing is these 4 children basically are inheriting this massive business, this incredible wealth, and this incredible power as well that comes alongside this wealth and this business as well.
Yeah, the patriarch was also an MP. So there's also this idea of, yes, there's the business aspect, but also they have what would be significant political power in Ireland.
Within the show, that's one of the main plot points for Arthur Guinness, who's the eldest son of Benjamin Guinness. And he is someone who's not really that interested in the business. He's not really interested in actually making Guinness and making it better and exporting it. He's just interested in spending the money, partying, kind of the classic trope of what you see maybe with an eldest son or something. One of the main plot points is that within the will, he has to be involved in the business. And then within it, they also kind of say, you also have to become this MP.
Yeah. Otherwise, he loses everything. So
he loses everything.
That's like one of the big tension points, episode 1 and 2, is he kind of has this realization of, for him, he feels trapped because he's saying, you know, I'm bound into this life that I've hated and I only want the benefits and I don't actually want to be engaged in it in that way.
But it's also interesting because he's trapped in the business, but he's also trapped in his own life, however you want to call that, because he is gay. And within that time it was illegal to be gay, and so he can't be open about it, he can't be public about it, and because he's someone within such a significant family and kind of all eyes are on him at all times, that he has to be really careful when he's doing stuff kind of underground with different people and whatnot. And that's kind of a plot point where some gangsters kind of use that as leverage to get money and power, and so like it's kind of a whole thing really. And it is interesting because the show paints itself as being based upon reality, and I think it says that this is based upon true events and stuff, but in reality, it just isn't really based on anything that's true at all. Apart from the fact there was a Guinness family, these people did exist, but then all the plot points that come out of it aren't just true at all. I've got a big list of all the things that aren't true in the show, and it's shocking.
I mean, it's definitely a fictitious show. I wouldn't watch it thinking it's a documentary.
No. And the thing is, like when I'm watching things based upon true events, you know they're going to add some things. You know they're going to change things slightly. I'm okay with that. But then the way they painted it, I thought it'd be a lot truer than what it actually is.
Yeah.
So I'll go through the list, and some of these things I couldn't believe. So at the start, there is a funeral of Benjamin, the patriarch of the family, who's now died. And there is the whole thing at the start is that there's going to be some tension from the Fenians. They're going to come and they're going to try and riot because they don't like Guinness. They don't like Benjamin for what he stands for and everything like that. Essentially, this riot happens, and then Rafferty and all these kind of like goons from the Guinness factory, they all come and beat up the Fenians. It's this whole thing. Never happened. Not true at all.
Did it not?
Nope. Yeah, because one of the main threads comes out of that really is Jack Gleason's character, Byron Hedges. He is the illegitimate son of Benjamin Guinness and a Fenian woman. And he kind of comes in at some point and he says, I can help you branch out into America and get in with the Fenians and things like this and make loads more money and stuff. And that's kind of a whole big plot point. Never happened.
Was he real?
Nope.
He wasn't real at all?
Nope.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, there's no record of him being existing.
Okay, yeah.
And then obviously as well, part of what Byron Hedges does is he goes to America and he talks with the Fenian Brotherhood, and then they get 15% of the profits of Guinness.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Wait, that's a lot now. Yeah. We're getting to almost the whole. So basically, none of it happened.
All the Fenian stuff just didn't really happen.
Really?
So there may have been some interactions with Fenians and stuff, because obviously that's the political tension of the time.
What about Edward with the main Fenian person?
Not real.
Fall in love?
Not real.
Really?
Yep.
Were the brother and sister real?
There's no record of that from what I could see. Edward Guinness, at some point within the show, he presents the world famous logo of the harp, and he says, this is what we're going to kind of have as our logo. Didn't happen.
Did it not?
It was actually...
Wait, so what happened with the harp?
The harp was introduced earlier.
In the show, that's a big point because that was the symbol of Ireland that the Fenians used, and that was him trying to placate the Fenians because they needed them for the votes and all this type of stuff. And it was like an epic thing when it came on screen. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that was just...
It wasn't true. Basically, what happened was, apparently, according to my research, they were using the logo years earlier, not like decades earlier, but a couple of years earlier, under their father, Benjamin. And then, from what I understand, is that they made that more prominent.
I see, okay.
But it was being used
still
already.
There.
Yeah. Anne Guinness, who had a miscarriage on her way to Clunboo, and she saw how the people lived, and she was shocked to the fact that people are living in this poverty. And then that kind of kickstarts a whole arm of the business of helping people in need. There's no evidence that happened. They were doing that charity work years before, even when it first got founded in the 1700s.
So she didn't start it?
She didn't start it.
Oh, she's like the driving force of like...
Yeah, no.
We've not been doing anything, now I'm starting it. And it becomes kind of like what the ladies of the Guinness house do. is kind of
Yeah.
pioneering in the show. I'm clear because apparently it's not real.
It's not real. I think she was involved heavily in the charity arm of it, and I think she probably pioneered a lot of stuff, definitely.
Yeah.
But the idea that they weren't doing anything, and then she saw this poverty and they started doing stuff, not true. The whole kind of idea that Arthur and Edward, the two oldest sons, were kind of chained to the business. They would forfeit the business if they did certain things or weren't involved in certain capacities. That wasn't really true.
To be honest, I think the show could have worked without it being true.
How so?
I think the show could have worked without that being a plot point. After episode 2, there isn't really much built on the fact that they're locked into this thing in the will. Do you know what I mean? Like,
True, yeah.
Later on, Arthur kind of grows into himself in the business aspect. Do you know what I mean? So I think you could have almost gotten rid of it, and I don't think the season would have changed at all, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Because in real life, they both inherited the business, but Arthur and Edward had the option to buy the other one out. And so in the end, I think it was Edward bought out Arthur.
Did they work together in real life?
From what I understand, there was a period where they worked together, but eventually Edward bought out Arthur.
Okay.
But then the big one, Arthur's gay in the whole show,
Yeah,
and that's a
yeah.
massive plot point. It's a massive
It's
thing.
huge, yeah.
And he's married to this lady called Lady Olivia. She knows he's gay and everything like that. And they have this arrangement where they'll get married because of duty and whatever to be seen for the public. But behind closed doors, they can sleep with whoever they want to.
Yeah.
And there is no evidence that this was the case. They were married for around 50 years, apparently, and they had 0 children, no children. So people have said over time that maybe this is what was going on, and maybe this was the case, but there is no evidence to suggest that that is true in any way whatsoever. I've seen some things online about some of the members of the Guinness family being unhappy that they've changed that aspect.
Which I think is a fair reaction, to be honest. I think because of the way it's portrayed in the show, as it's a very destructive part of his life. It's not just like, this is a wholesome fella doing wholesome stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not the most destructive brother in the family, but he's definitely like portrayed as a loose cannon and a bit licentious. And because at that time, I think in the show, I don't know whether this is a fact you have or not, in the show it was that you'd be imprisoned for 20 years and all this type of stuff. There were real criminal charges associated with it. And so obviously it's all very hidden and, you know, almost cloak and dagger feel to it in the show. And I do think that it not being true is as close to a character assassination as you can get, I think, because it's a huge thing of who he is in the show.
Yeah.
And so I think it's different when you're representing someone who is real and who, like, they still have family members alive.
So, as you can see, they changed a lot. And as well as that, in the end, the big kind of cliffhanger is Arthur is running for Parliament and to be MP.
Was that real?
So, yeah, so he was involved in
run
politics.
for-
Yeah, I think he's involved in politics. Right at the end of the show, he's making a speech and one of the Fenians is trying to assassinate him. There's been no recorded assassination attempts on Arthur's life.
Okay.
There were threats that were made, apparently, via letter and stuff like that, but there's no actual evidence there was a credible threat like you see in the show where he's making a speech and someone pulling out a gun and he fires. Will he, won't he kind of shoot him? And I think that's what annoyed me at the end of the series is that I'm left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And the way that series work these days is that it's going to be another 2 years before...
Could be another 4 years at this
before
rate.
another series
Could
comes
be
out.
cancelled.
So for me, it's annoying because I'm actually interested. I want to know what happens. Whereas in 2 years' time, am I going to be interested? Who knows? I might move on in my life. So as you can see, it says it's based upon true events, but it's very, very, very loosely.
It's really not based on true.
No. Well, what we'll do is we'll get onto the kind of the Christian element to it because there were some things to talk about, I think, from that kind of Christian perspective. And so I know you had some thoughts. So what did you kind of pull from it?
So for me, what I found very interesting from the very beginning, really, I mean, it's the main theme for the first 2 episodes and then kind of dies down a bit, comes back a little bit, maybe like episode 6 or 7. But this idea of like inherited expectation, and really the core theme is, will the children be able to handle what they've been given and go beyond, or are they going to destroy the thing that's been given it? And even those kind of political threats and gangster threats at the beginning of the season are really threats against how well they'll handle that. And we've been looking at a bunch of different things just in our home church about living up to the calling of Christ, or that we are God's inheritance, or that God's own possession, or that God has invested all this stuff in us. And actually, part of being a Christian is living up to the calling that we have. That actually we're not just out here, you know, like with nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not bound by anything, but actually we have a calling. And so for me, I found that theme really interesting in the show, because all the siblings react differently. So as we said, Arthur's very much like, I don't want the calling. I want the benefit of the calling, but I don't want the responsibility of the calling. And Edward, the second son, he's all about it. He's the grafter. He wants to do the dirty work, and he wants the money, and he wants to do really well with it. The sister kind of wants to do what she can, but she feels a little bit slighted, and you know, she feels like she's kind of been pushed to the side. And then the younger brother, I don't know if his storyline is real, but in the show, he's just fully off the rails, dealing with his own, you know, alcoholism and drug stuff and all these different things. And he kind of like engages with it, but he never really fully engages. And I think it was almost like a microcosm of in the church. I could see the different ways that people respond to what it actually means to be a Christian. And you have this great calling, and yes, there's incredible benefits and, you know, salvation. But then the more you read the Bible and you see that actually there's this whole scope of stuff that Jesus has called us to do, and even to represent him. A huge thing in the show is the Guinness name, and part of the big stuff that happens is that they have to fight to protect the Guinness name. And I think one of my favorite scriptures is talking about having care for the name of Jesus and the testimony of Jesus. And I think not all the time, but sometimes the church isn't as concerned about the testimony of Jesus, or what's the reputation of Jesus's name based off how I act, or based off how, you know, my church group acts towards this other people, whether it's another church group or people in secular life. I think for me, that's something that the older I get, the more I'm aware of, actually, I represent someone. It's not just me, Wana, but my life represents Jesus. And so that idea for me, I thought was like a really nice macro thing, where when you get to the end of the series, the younger brother is still kind of off, you know?
Yeah.
But you see the three of them are really kind of together. They've all embraced the calling in the way that they're called to do it, at least in the show. And they all kind of present a united front. And as the big climax is the assassination attempt, and they all say, no, we're going to sit with you. We're all going to be there together as a family. And for me, like, that's the lens I saw it through, of like living up to the calling and seeing that visualized. I thought was a really cool thing.
I noticed that as well. And I think it was interesting, even from a Christian perspective, because ultimately Guinness in itself was started by a guy called Arthur Guinness in the 1700s. And he was a really serious Christian. He's someone who,
Was he?
Yeah, he loved God. He was a member of the Church of Ireland. He was influenced a lot by the evangelical revival during that period, during that day.
Oh, that's fascinating.
He was a massive supporter of ministries, missionaries. He even funded John Wesley. And it was really set up to be a business. Obviously, the founder wanted to make money and start a business.
Yeah.
But also during this time as well, in the 1700s, water was very much contaminated. And so people were drinking hard liquor, like they were drinking like gin, which was cheap and it was strong, and everyone was just drunk all the time, and it kind of led to poverty and addiction and whatever else. And so part of the reason he set up Guinness was and to create a drink that would be low alcohol content and safe to drink for people. And,
fascinating.
And so it could be safer and less destructive than what gin and other stuff was doing.
Yeah.
And it was, so there was a real kind of Christian heart behind it. And I think when you get to, well, this is 100 years later, that whole kind of Christian element to it has just been so diluted to the point where you see it in the first episode, they're all kind of gathered in the house and they're fighting, like jabbing at each other. And then they're like, guys, we need to kind of remain a united front to the people because we're a good Christian family, and kind of wanting to portray that idea that they're known as good Christian people, and therefore they need to portray this to the world.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting to kind of watch. There's no indication that any of them are Christians in any capacity whatsoever throughout the whole thing, in the way that they're living, in the way they're doing things. And even in the first episode, you can see them in the church when they're singing the songs. They're bored out of their minds. They're can we just get this bit over and done with? But they have to do it because you have to put on this front that they're a Christian business set up by a Christian guy, and so they're all Christians.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting because you see that within the world today. You see so many people who are cultural Christians or Christians just by name, really. I've got so many non-Christian friends who are like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I was christened. And I'm like, well, tell me about Jesus then. They have no idea what Jesus did, why he came. They have no idea. They never read a Bible in their lives. They just know like Noah's Ark story and stuff like that. Just the classic kind of stories you get told in a C of E primary school and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting to kind of see that in the show and see how that's reflected in real life of like, they've got these expectations that they have to be these good Christian people, but they're actually behind the scenes just not really at all. They put a real emphasis on teaching the next generation, I thought. Because when you see that kind of the founder, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy, he clearly was legit. You know, he clearly loved God. He clearly wanted to help people. He clearly was trying to do the work of God and using the money and the wealth he was creating to actually kind of advance the kingdom. And yet, at some point down the line, it got
doesn't
so
take long
diluted
for the dilution to happen, you know?
Definitely not. And you kind of see it even today. You see like some pastors' kids who are just awful. They're just kind of doing their own things, and they're saying that's universally, if anyone here is a pastor's kid. You can see in real life how quick things can get diluted, but even here, 100 years after that founding, it just makes sense how diluted it can become.
Yeah.
And they put a real emphasis on kind of making sure that you're teaching the next generation and you're actually helping the next generation come in to know who God is. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how you can go from having a founder who has all these kind of desires to want to use this wealth created to advance the kingdom, to help people who are in poverty and whatever it may be, and just to see how far that can get diluted 100 years later. But that's no surprise when you look at the culture and you look at kind of people in church. We all know people in church who, apart from good Christian families, who just kind of go their own path and go their own way.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to kind of see that dilution take place.
One of the things I really liked, actually, which it's a bit weird because the show frames it slightly differently, but I think it showed the mindset in that time frame of the importance of marriage and actually the innate value that marriage had for stability and as a launch pad for you to be able to go and actually be successful and stable. Do you know what I mean? And so that's one of the threads of the show is that the sister was married, but that the other brothers needed to marry, and they needed to marry well in order for them to be successful in the business. And of course, the show kind of frames it dramatized with a 2025 sensibility towards that. But I think it actually showed that there was a time when marriage had a really high value in society, which I don't think it has the same value nowadays, of where people are even conscious of, I need to marry well. That, like, even that idea of marrying well, making sure you marry someone that means that you'll be able to fulfill your mission and your purpose. Do you know what I mean? Like making sure you don't marry someone that might be compatible, but they might be against what you feel like your mission is. That was a big theme in the show. And of course, we talked about how Arthur's not gay in real life. And so that was a big part of their marriage thing in the show, was that they kind of had this agreement. But even in the show, I think we spent the most time with Arthur and his wife in that marriage relationship. You saw that it was a mutually beneficial thing, and the stability and strength that a husband gives a wife and a wife gives a husband, which I think was probably even greater in the real life version of the people than in the show. I think they probably did them a little bit wrong in the show. But I thought it was a really interesting perspective on how vastly the ideas of marriage have changed, to where nowadays most people think marriage is only legal, there's no benefit to marriage. Of course, I'm talking specifically about secular. Hopefully the church has a different idea. But that's very much the idea, is most people think, why would you get married? You know, I mean, I've got a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, and that's enough. But actually you see, the show helps see what the value is of making a commitment to someone and being able to support them through that, as well as champion them and them champion you, and you secure them, they secure you. Do you know what I mean? And I think
100%.
I think that kind of bleeds from the original Arthur being a Christian. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like the diluting that we came to at that post 100 and whatever years, was that one of the main things they kept was, we do all have to marry well so that we achieve what we're supposed to achieve.
100%. I think that's so important in the church as well, because I think the church has sometimes made an idol of marriage. And I think what it's done is, if people get to 25 years old and they're not married, they start to panic and go, oh my gosh, what is going on? I need to find someone. And so then they kind of settle for something that isn't quite right. As you were saying there, even in the kingdom, you can have someone who's a Christian, who's a believer, but may not be necessarily the best person for you.
Yeah.
I heard it on a podcast once. They said the question you should ask yourself when you're looking at someone and saying, should I marry them or not, is, can I build the kingdom in a greater way with them than I can on my own? That was a really kind of good and helpful thing to think about it. We need to marry well in order to kind of fulfill this mission, fulfill this duty that we have. Yeah. And I think often within the church, what we do is we just get into panic mode when you get to a certain age, and you just kind of go, oh, they look nice, they're pretty, they're single.
And part of it is the church has sold Christianity as marriage, which actually Christianity isn't marriage. Marriage is a part of it, but you only have to look through a short amount of the New Testament to see many of the early church fathers, many of the people who served in the church at that time weren't married, and it wasn't a stigmatized thing to not be married. Whereas I think we're definitely in that place now where, you know, even in some places, if you're 23 and you're not engaged or married, it's kind of like, what's happening? You went through Bible college, you didn't find anyone, you know what I mean? But I think what you see in the show is that each sibling has to decide for themselves, am I going to answer the calling of the inheritance I've been left? And then once they have that answer, they can figure out the rest of the decisions they have to make. And I think, related to what you're saying, I think sometimes we don't really live that way as Christians.
Well, we're coming to the end of this podcast, and so hope some of this has been really helpful and been insightful to you. Have you got any final thoughts you want to say before we wrap up?
I just think as a piece of media, it's fantastic. I know we've talked a lot about how historically accurate it is and even some macro themes, and not everyone identifies themes when they're watching something, you know. Some people, they just want to watch something and enjoy it. And as a piece of media, it's really well crafted. It's very well written, very well shot. Can't recommend this enough.
Definitely. And I've just had a Google, and apparently they're very confident about season 2.
Oh, that's worrying. That's real worrying. I mean, if you want to see more shows like this, watch it.
Yeah. Because
Netflix has a history of cancelling shows that are really liked but not watched enough at volume. And so if you've watched Peaky Blinders, for example, and you would like more shows from the people who do Peaky Blinders, then watch this or leave it on in the background or something, because that'll mean that it has a higher chance of being renewed. Yeah, and I need a season 2 because of the cliffhanger. Yeah, the cliffhanger was honestly insane, to be honest. Yeah. But thanks again for joining us today on Streams. I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. And if you have watched House of Guinness, we'd love to know what you think. If there's anything that you picked up on that we may have missed, or that maybe you want to emphasize, we're always happy to hear from you guys. And so you can email us at info@gnba.net. That's info@gnba.net. And if there is a movie or a TV show that you want us to check out, let us know. We're all ears. We'll happily look at them and consider them. But if you have enjoyed this as well, please give us a like, a rating, a comment, whatever it is that you're watching it on, as it does help get it out there further and helps more people discover this podcast. Thanks very much, Wana, for coming on. Thank you for having me. I've loved it. And I'll be back in the next one, so see you there.